Hello, good evening. Welcome to another edition of Inside the Process, premiering every Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. here on my Joel Holt's Notes 2021 YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me. We do this every week, and if you're so inclined, take a look at the link that takes you to the support page of my website. Thank you to those of you who do provide support and encouragement. And thank you most of all for being here. So I hope the anecdotal stories and accounts that I attempt here are interesting or helpful, or at least not totally boring. And I'll also play as well. And the theme for this evening is seeing through the lenses we have. And if you follow me at all, you've heard me talk about this. It's a really broad theme that has informed me and what I do. And the lens that I have, I describe as a wide-angle lens, and it's the only lens I have. You know, I see the whole context of things, and then I have to draw from that. And back 10, 15 years ago, when I was doing a lot of senior programming, one thing that came easily to me, which made me think about this, was being able to write themed programs with all these tune titles that would relate to a particular theme. And it's kind of like doing this. It's easy for me to go from the general idea to the specific content. Next to impossible for me to go to from the specific content to the general idea. And that generalizes to me as somebody who can play conceptually and improvisationally much more easily than I can, like, put the jigsaw puzzle together and play from sheet music. And that's just a function of my temperament, and I've learned that about myself, although most of my training is classical training. And I'll often talk about, like, taking a jigsaw puzzle apart or putting it together. And looking at a single piece of a puzzle without the context is maddening or something. It's not my skill set. And I remember thinking at one facility in particular, just randomly, you know, this comes pretty easy to me. It obviously says something about me, and what else does it say, and what can I do about it? And how does this help me and inform me going forward? So that's what I'm going to talk about. Maybe this will help you kind of zero in on how you see things, and however it is, whatever lens you have is completely legitimate. Not everybody wants to go there, and some people like to think that everybody has to think and process like them. No, we have to be ourselves. And certainly if you're going to be an artist, the only way you're going to do it authentically is to be yourself. So I would have these themes based on the calendar, or based on stories about my kids, or whatever. And I wish I could find where those programs were written. I wrote a lot of them, and they were fun to put together and fun to do. And I couldn't really even think of a lot of what it was, because I've kind of moved on, and that requires me to remember something specific. But I remember one story I would tell in the Halloween program. Now I'm remembering another story, and I can't decide which one to tell. You know, but you have little stories or illustrations of good luck, bad luck, things like that. And I grew up with a black cat, and every time I sat down at the piano to play, and there's a picture of me on the Facebook with Blackie sitting here, but Blackie would jump up here, and it would sound kind of like this, and then she'd plop right there and just sit there while I practice. But when I thought about it later, it's like, I just had a black cat cross my path. How many times in my life had I had a black cat cross my path? So if there is such a thing as black cat bad luck, I might have immunity, which came into play in a house we were renting when the kids were small. And we would go in and out the back door typically, and in the backyard, off to the side, there was a detached garage that we discovered one day a black cat had moved into. We didn't use the garage, so we didn't really even go over there that much. And that would mean that whenever you walk out the black door, you would be taking a chance on having a black cat cross your path. And I think there were people in the house at times that were concerned about that. I wasn't. I figured I already had immunity, right? But then one day, the black cat had like half a dozen black kittens. And it was just this black cat festival all over our backyard for several weeks. And didn't bother me, but I figured that there'd be some people looking at the back door thinking if they're going out, they're taking a chance on black cats. Of course, that's not how the song goes. Taking a chance on love, not black cats. Maybe that was silly, but I did it. It's done. So, when I would write those senior programs, I would come up with a broad theme first and then all the little stories. I remember in the same program with the black cat, it was like a superstition theme, I think. And I would play... Boy, I don't even know what... You know, I don't want to walk under a ladder without you, baby, you know, kind of thing. Ridiculous. But for this series, inside the process, what I do is when I get an idea, and sometimes like 6 or 7 come at once, I write ideas for potential themes to talk about. And then I allow them to germinate, and at any given time, 6 or 7 of them are in progress, and I look at the one that's making the most sense at the time and do it. And so that's just kind of harnessing my own temperament. And I'm grateful that I have learned to do that and have given myself the permission to do that. Uh, so the story will often write itself once I have the theme. Now, speaking of stories, and this is slightly ridiculous, but it brought me back to a barbershop quartet I put together in high school. And I don't know what got me on this kick. I'll often say, when asked about it, do I sing, I say no because I want to keep my job. And I can have really awful intonation. It's just not my skill set. But I was playing around in high school at singing barbershop quartets and wound up singing whatever part was necessary. Not that I was really good at it. But I remember we put together this choreography, and the choir director let me do it and made me sing first tenor because the one who could sing first tenor was like the star of the school play, and she didn't want to hurt his voice, and who cared about my voice? Oh, but anyhow, and we put together our little arrangement of while strolling through the park one day, and actually 2 of the 3 people who were part of that are my Facebook friends. So George and Dan, if either of you are watching, you'll remember this. I immediately raised my hat and made a polite remark, etc. Oh, the crazy things we do. So I already mentioned, I believe, the idea of the jigsaw puzzle. If we're inclined to see the entire picture first before we can take it apart, because then we understand, the context of all the parts. Or for somebody who focuses on the detail and compiles a picture based on arranging the detail, which is a really generalized oversimplification, but not inappropriate, about the difference between classical music and jazz, or improvisation and structured reading. And I really learned this about myself in college. And when I was a piano major, very fortunate to study with Ohida Kaplinski for 2 years before she got to Juilliard, and it's been there forever. And as much as I profited from that, and as wonderful of a teacher as she was, and how important that was to me, I still really struggled and would say things. I don't know if I ever said it to her, but I would say, just show me where the target is so that I can pull back my bow and arrow and aim it properly. As opposed to, you're working on this little concept, little, half a beat of a measure of one thing, and you're doing it lesson after lesson, and then somehow you're supposed to remember all, what you're doing there so you can, apply that here, and then that makes the whole thing sound like this other thing. And I began to realize then anyway, that that's kind of a personality trait. It's something that everybody needs to learn to do, but my personality was so the opposite. And I can relate to Keith Jarrett. I mean, musically, he's the guy, but I can relate to him when he says, I learned I was an improviser through being a classical musician. And he was one of these rare people who could do both. So for me, it's, not a microscope or a magnifying glass, which some people lead with, and that's their skill set. Mine is a telescope, or like looking over the whole horizon, or looking up and seeing the sky. I love that. It's something I just thought of. And I didn't write this down or think of it. And I'm not entirely prepared to do it the way I've done it, because it's been a long time. I'm not explaining myself. One of the classical pieces that many intermediate classical pianists learn is a theme and variations written by Mozart. And the theme is what we know as Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. I don't even remember any of it. I'm not going to try to play it. And my approach is to just have theme and improvisation. It's kind of related to this. So I'm going to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star with the idea of seeing what improvisations come out of it, just for fun. Let it happen. See the big picture. Look up at the stars. Don't think about them. Just be there. Mozart, you can stop rolling over in your grave. That was just an exercise in silliness. But maybe just illustrates the idea that the content, the specific content for me, flows from a general theme or an idea. And that's just me. And I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do it. This is not exactly related to music, and it comes from a book written by arguably the prominent writer on the diversity of world religions. If you studied comparative religions or any religions in college, chances are you read a book or more by Houston Smith, who wrote a book later on in life. Not sure that it was his last book, but it was a much later book, and he was more personal about it and called it The Soul of Christianity. So it's in the context of that book, and the reason that that book is appropriate because the terminology is going to relate to that book, but this is a description that can be generalized. And he talks about esoterics and exoterics. And I never heard of an exoteric, but it's easy to deduce that it's the opposite of esoteric, and I'm kind of thinking he made up that word. But it works well. And it kind of describes the two types of people I'm talking about as general templates. The one who sees through the wide-angle lens, who sees the bigger picture, and the one who looks at something square on and sees just what it is. And both people are in their element when they are working from that starting point. And what he says, and this is going to be the religious or Christianity reference, is that to the esoteric, God is in focal view. To the exoteric, the created world is in focus, and God must be inferred from it. It's a pretty potent statement, and very true. To the esoteric, and that would be me, you are seeing beyond what you're looking at to the greater meaning all the time. If I put, one of the things that I do every day, because performing to your strength, practice to your weakness, and reading is a weakness, because it requires you to be that focus on that thing right in front of you. So I'll open a hymnal most every day, and I'll do some reading of a hymn. And now my wide-angle lens is failing me because I forget exactly why I was going to use that as an illustration. Because if I sit down and play a hymn, I don't think this was the point. Well, let me find a random hymn, since I have the book open. And here is a hymn. Here's a hymn that I played as my Sunday evening hymn Facebook post just this past week. Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. And I am able to read this hymn. It's a straight read. Some I have to work at. Now, for the most part, I played exactly what was there, and that is blood pressure raising, stress inducing, and headache causing. Because it's easier for me to look at this and look past it and play things like this. is one better? Is one worse? Is one the song and one not the song? No. One was a strict interpretation of what was there, and the other was finding meaning in what was there and then running with it. And that would be kind of the difference between the esoteric and the exoteric. The created world is in focus and God must be inferred from it. The bigger picture is put together through those jigsaw puzzle pieces being put in, where for me, I just like look out over wherever I am or whatever I am. Look out over at whatever I am or wherever I am, and let it all flow from that. Last night, full moon. I had to be out last night. I had to stay up late. It was a beautiful, clear night. And if you follow my Facebook page, you saw I had to take a picture of it. And it's like, yeah, that's where I learned stuff, man. Walking under the full moon. it's always easier for me to look over the whole of something and absorb meaning than staring at something in isolation. Or you could say, I look at something and see beyond it. I remember an experience I had 15 years ago, maybe, in my backyard. It wasn't a development that I lived in exactly, but it was kind of like it. And there was houses on either side. I lived in a cul-de-sac. And my next door neighbor, and the fence between the yard, and of course I've been over in his yard many times, and I knew it was over there. And he had a nice house, and he had nice things, and he had the swimming pool in his yard, and all of that. And he, as many people do, enjoyed his things. I can't keep track of things. And I just had this moment where I'm standing in kind of the middle of my yard, and I just kind of recognize this patch of grass around me. And there is this concrete reality sense that I had about just the space around me. You know, it was just the most real thing. And I was contrasting that, looking at my neighbor's house. And, you know, and those are, you know, concrete real things, supposedly. And they weren't real to me at all. You know, and you know, when things like that would happen, and they might earlier in life have seemed bizarre, I've learned to let them happen and learn and grow from them. You know, and I don't know if that came before or after reading the Houston Smith and quote, kind of just got combined, quote, but it certainly illustrates it. You know, that if you don't say God isn't focal for you, you say like the larger picture, the thing not right in front of us is what we see most clearly. And for others, it's like, you know, like, this is actually maybe too much of a detour. It's like, I know how wealthy and blessed I am, having nothing to do with money. But I know how like wealthy and blessed I am in an esoteric sense, and other people might, you know, look at their concrete things and calculate the value of them and try to figure out, you know, what their personal worth is, kind of thing. So, yeah, that's my craziness. Looking at my neighbor's house. And of course I love to stand at the ocean and look out. see, somewhere out of our line of sight, our sensory perception. But are we connected to it? We certainly are. And some of us learn that we are, in fact, gifted to be connected to it, to feel somebody's emotions, even if they're in the next town, or maybe even to physically see someplace where you were not at the time, and that might be oversimplifying to put it under the esoteric lens, but in that esoteric / exoteric or wide angle lens versus, magnifying glass lens, those are the distinctions. And, the best way for me to illustrate that is for me to play the piano. And when people ask me the following question, they actually know the answer, even if they've just met me, because it's kind of obvious. I couldn't go back and play exactly what I played before. Not that it was worth playing again. I'm not sure. Don't think it was necessarily. But the thing is, that's gone. That's not something I remember. But of course, there are people, particularly song composers, who latch on to something and they remember it completely. Not me. So that's the bigger point here, that there are different ways to look at the same thing. And, oh, yes, I didn't finish the Houston Smith thing, because the real punchline follows. Because Houston Smith goes on to talk about exoterics as providing structures in which esoterics can operate. And so now in the context of his book, The Soul of Christianity, he's talking about religious institutions and church structures, right? But you could apply that anywhere. But the idea is, and I've benefited from this so many times, if somebody provides me a structure and a framework, that I can go in and just be who I am. I like to say, I love structure when somebody can provide it for me. It's great. I really appreciate it. It's helpful. I can't really do it so well for myself because I'm not coming from that place. And so the esoteric understands that the exoteric plays a vital function in society and for themselves, for me. Yeah, provide me with structure. Yeah, help. Yeah. And so the last line of that little definition that Houston Smith says is, and this is like a zinger and it's so true, the esoteric understands the need for the exoteric, but the reverse doesn't hold. We all know people who are like very black and white, right? And it's either right or it's wrong. And some of those people will be annoyed by me improvising everything. Play it the way it's supposed to be. And then, of course, it's like, what do you mean supposed to be? It's supposed to be whatever it is organically. Oh, the music. Oh, well, which music? The one the songwriter wrote. Well, which version is that? And it's just all this other stuff. It just kind of goes. So, is something what you see it as? Or does what you see exist in your vision to point you to something deeper? Big question there. And the cleanest way I can answer that question is yes. Because it really depends on your lenses. And, I certainly can't make people who have different lenses see through mine. I'd like to believe that I can help people appreciate that more who don't have those lenses or see things somewhat differently or see a bigger picture. Just like I can be helpful with somebody who's like an accountant and shows me how to keep things in a straight line, kind of. Now, me answering that question, yes, which was essentially embracing a paradox. I realized that for some, that's not an answer at all, which is a big rabbit hole now of questions versus answers that I won't go down. The microscope lens or the magnifying glass lens is looking for answers, and the wide-angle lens doesn't need the answer because the question, if it's even a question, just the unanswered thing is now the place to learn and not be hemmed in by drawing a conclusion. I'm going to stop trying to talk and just play a tune about some questions that point to a deeper meaning. If you're familiar with this old Irving Berlin tune, which I like to play. How deep is the ocean? How high is the sky? How much do I love you? I'll tell you no lie. How deep is the ocean? How high is the sky? Yeah, that's kind of my lenses right there. So I learned something really interesting through reading a particular book about brain waves. And this kind of just ties in to this whole topic and explains something about myself. You notice that and I'm not the only musician who you'll see do this, likes to close my eyes when I play. Or if my eyes are open, I'm not really looking at something in a focused way. And come to find out that when you focus your eyes, you're actually taking yourself into the beta brainwave, higher vibratory level of thought that for somebody like me is not the creative space. So actually the deeper intelligence lies in I think it's the alpha brain waves, the next level, the next level down. And that's where somebody like me can take it deeper. And learning that focusing your eyes actually takes you out of the space, essentially, was a real eye-opener or closer for me. And explains something too, that when you are a classical piano student and you're seriously learning pieces, when it's time to perform them, you're always told you need to memorize them. And memorization is impossible for me because I'll remember the essence of it and not the specific content. But in that classical realm, you memorize it, you internalize all of those notes. Because, and I don't know if this is the conscious reason or not, but it turns out that it ties directly with this. Because now that you're not actively engaged in a sensory way, pulling that information off the paper with your eyes, you are able to express more deeply from another place where you couldn't express if you had to focus with your eyes. So that is interesting. Oh my goodness. Here's a whole set of notes that I wasn't planning to talk about. Now what do? I get myself confused. So I think what I'm going to do is just go completely off the reservation. If I can find it, here it is. Two pieces that I'll play often in solo piano programming are two ragtime pieces, and I'll typically just play the A and B section. This is the Entertainer and the Maple Leaf Rag, and I never open music to it, but I'm going to open the music to the Entertainer. And one of my little shtick things is as I say, I really can't keep things straight, but I'm going to try, and I'm going to try to play it straight. And then I just kind of go off on this ridiculous tangent and quote stupid stuff. But even when I pretend to play it straight, I know I'm not getting every one of these notes right. But I'm still playing absolutely the essence of it. I wasn't planning on demonstrating this, but let's just see what happens. So let me play the A section after the part that goes like... Oh yeah, I gotta go. So I, except for that sloppy spot, actually played exactly the notes that are there, and that helped me play sloppy because it's like, ugh. So now I'll look at this, and I'll play the same thing, and it might sound exactly the same to you, or let's see. Trying to pull off, I'm not able to pull off. I should have tried this ahead of time because I'm trying to make small deliberate changes, but that's bringing me in my thought process. So I can't do it gradually. I'm just going to close it, and now I can play whatever whatever the essence of it speaks to me to do. And I am too far into this hour to go back now. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not happy with that illustration because I'm still kind of tying myself to a structure. But maybe you get the idea that for me, this defines the entertainer. Obviously, not exactly the way it was, but does it still sound like the entertainer to you? It certainly does to me, and much easier for me to pull off. That's the point of that. And that little spontaneous curveball, trip and fall down thing came out of me remarking about being able to focus with your eyes, right? So this is what I was going to play. There we go. Jeepers creepers, where did you get that mess? So anyway, welcome to my world. Yeah, and we make our world according to who we are and the path we're on, right? Don't try to be somebody you're not. Be everything you are, and then it will all be as wonderful as it can be, or something. see through the lenses you have. Perhaps this has inspired you to do some exploring on your own. Thank you for being here, and thank you for hanging in with me. And I'll be updating my schedule in the next day or so on my website. Keep in touch. Hope to see you soon, hopefully in person. Thank you.